Hello, welcome to today's program. My name is Katie O'Reilly. I'm the programmer here at Chicago Humanities. Thanks for being here with us today. I'm very excited to have you with us as we hear from disability advocate and online creative Molly Burke, as she offers a candid look at navigating blindness, resilience, and representation in a sighted world. I do want to make a note, if you weren't aware, we have a book signing following this program. And in addition to that, if you purchase a copy of the physical book here today with Seminary Co-op, Libro FM has generously partnered with us to also provide a free audiobook version. So just wanted to make sure that folks knew that that was available. This is just one event that is happening for our Fall Festival this year, which is a dynamic citywide celebration continuing our long-standing tradition of creating spaces where, new script for a new season. Citywide celebration continuing our long-standing tradition of creating spaces where ideas, creativity, and community thrive, featuring nearly 50 unforgettable events. None of it would be possible without you, our curious and committed audience. If you love what we do, please consider becoming members today at our box office or by visiting chicagohumanities.org. This event is also presented in partnership with Illinois Tech. Now a few words about our speakers. Our moderator, Justin Dugan LeBlanc, is a deaf and queer installation artist and textile designer. He is an associate professor of fashion studies at Columbia College Chicago, where he teaches fashion and installation design. Molly Burke is a multi-hyphenate creative and advocate, a blind public speaker, content creator, consultant, model, and author, who has built a powerful global platform on over 5 million followers. Her voice has been heard on some of the most prestigious stages, from the United Nations to the World Economic Forum in Davos, and earned her an honorary Clio Health Award. Please join me in welcoming Justin Dugan LeBlanc and Molly Burke.
Hello. Thank you. What a warm welcome. Yes, you get a treat for finding the chair. Good job.
Cool. Well, thank you for having us today. I'm really excited to be here with Molly. And I just want to do another round of applause for Molly again, because of the
Thank you.
So my name is Justin Dugan LeBlanc, and I'm going to do a quick little introduction. I'm wearing a black pant and black and white shirt, and I have Molly's book with me today. And I'm really excited to talk about the book and joining everything in between. So I'm typically a person who like to have a coffee and have a conversation. So I think that will be the style for today. But I would love to hear about what you would like to share and so forth.
Well, since you did a nice little image description, I'll do mine. I am wearing a blue and white striped kind of boxy blouse with very fun like pearl and sparkle details. And then I have some dark wash flared jeans and a nice chunky brown boot. I came to Chicago in October thinking fall. And I was thinking I was getting to escape some Los Angeles heat and get my fall vibes. And I am dying. It is hotter here than in Los Angeles. So that really surprised me. So I'm really dressed for fall, not for late summer.
Yeah.
But excited to be here, and thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. And thank you, Justin, for having this conversation with me.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I love the top. I mean, can I borrow you sometime?
Of course.
Wonderful.
The moment you said that you're a fashion designer, I was like, we'll get along well.
Well, again, thank you for coming today. And I had the opportunity to read your book. So I just finished it 2 days ago. And it was a really inspiring book to read. And I want to say one thing about the book is there were so many similar narratives in the story between our lives. So I was born and raised deaf. And some of the story that you presented in the book is very similar. It's like I still have goosebumps how similar some of the things that happened to us throughout our life. And I know writing the book and really expressing your feeling, the things that have occurred throughout your life, your vulnerability. And I'm curious to know why do you say write a book now?
It's a great question. You know, when we think of a memoir, we think of telling your life story. And you think of telling your life story at the end of your life. And I'm 31, so it's quite early to write a memoir.
That's true.
I've been asked to write a book for so many years. And for many years, I was told that I was going to write a book. Like, you have to write a book. And it just never felt right. And my audiobook, It's Not What It Looks Like, that I came out with in 2019, was kind of my way of like quelling people's thirst for a book. I was like, here, I'll give you this taste. And I'll buy myself a little more time.
Yeah.
And then when I was entering my late 20s and I was coming up on 30, I reflected on what I had accomplished in that decade of my life, from 20 to 30. And I felt really proud of what I had been able to do in my 10 years on social media. I started at 20, so turning 30 marked 10 years of sharing my life online. And I was really proud to feel like I had been at least one small part of carving a path for disability representation on social media. And I thought, when I turn 40, what do I want to look back on this decade of my life, of my 30s, and say that I've accomplished? And I knew that in order to accomplish what I wanted to, I needed to write the book.
Yeah.
And I realized that writing a memoir doesn't mean I only have to write one. I don't have to write my whole life story at the end of my life. I can write my life story in installments. Yes. And I also realized that writing your life story doesn't mean you have to write everything that's ever happened to you. And that was a really hard realization for me. I think a lot of what stopped me from wanting to write a book before was there was like a lot that I wasn't ready to talk about. And as somebody who is a very open book and who's very honest and very willing to be vulnerable, it was hard for me to feel like I could write my story and leave things out.
Yeah.
Because that didn't feel like truthful. It didn't feel like me. I've always said it's harder for me to put up a boundary than it is for me to tell you everything. That's just who I am naturally. I have no filter, for better or worse. And I think not being able to see people's reactions to the unhinged things I say just keeps me saying them, you know? And so I felt like, how can I write a book and like leave things out? And that's where like having a really, really wonderful team help me navigate that was so critical. And for me, my literary agent, Courtney, is the only reason this book exists. She was the first person who told me, like, this book can be whatever this book is meant to be, and you've got so many more books in you. And you don't have to tell everything. You tell the stories that serve the mission of this book, and other stories can be saved for other books that are right for them. And throughout the entire writing process, you know, I'd have moments where I'd write something and I'd submit it and she'd read it and she'd be like, I want to chat. Like, this feels like something you talked about not wanting to share. So I like want to check in, and it's like, did you just change your mind? And if so, that's okay. But I also want to remind you that this was something that you initially said you didn't feel comfortable sharing yet. So if this was just like a practice in writing and an emotional moment that you were able to like put it out on a page, let's put it in a separate folder and we save it for later. It can exist still for a future book if you don't want to put it in. And it was so wonderful to have somebody on my team who wasn't just like, oh, this is a juicy story. Yeah, this will make people want to read it. But it was actually like, I want you to stay true to like your comfort zone and know that like writing in the privacy of your home and putting it on bookshelves is a very different thing.
Yeah.
And this can maybe just be something that you wrote privately that can stay private until you are ready. So that was a lot. There was a lot emotionally to work through in writing a book. So I will say, even when I was chatting with my publisher about the book, like I was like, I don't really feel comfortable calling this a memoir because it's not my life, my whole life story. And they were like, but it is a memoir. It is your life story. Just because it's not every detail that's ever happened doesn't mean it's not your life story still. So that was even something I had to grapple with, that I can still call it a memoir, even though it's not every detail ever.
No, thank you for sharing that. I think that's really important to mention that. And I look forward to the next book already. And relating to the book, one of the things that we know is really important to become very visible as a person who has disabilities. And I'm curious from your point of view growing up, because one of the things that you mentioned in the book is not being able to find someone who had a similar or somebody to look up to. And how do you feel now that you have become that person?
You know, it means so much to me when you say something like you saw yourself in reading the book.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we have different disabilities and different lived experiences, you still saw yourself in the stories. And that's exactly why representation matters. And that's why I called it unseen. Because in so many ways in my life, I have felt unseen. I have felt unseen by industries that don't design accessibly. I felt unseen by the media industry that I love so much, but doesn't truly care to represent my community authentically. I felt unseen socially when people treat me differently, when I know inside I'm the same. And so I wrote this book for anybody else who knows what it's like to be unseen.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean we've lived the same life or we have the same disability. That might mean you're a gay Black man who grew up in the South and felt really alone in a rural community. That might mean that you're a deaf man. That might mean that you're a trans woman navigating transition. It's for anybody who's ever felt unseen in their life to know that that experience is not isolated, that you are not alone in those feelings.
Cool.
And I think it's really interesting to hear from people who have been an early reader, who have lived like a rather privileged life. I saw one comment from, no offense to the older straight cis white men who are non-disabled in the room, but I saw a comment from just that type of archetype, and he was like, this book feels like a lot of complaining. And I was like, that's your privilege speaking, sir, because you've never had to deal with hardship. And this book, I want to be so clear, is not a memoir of struggle to success. That is not my story.
Mm-hmm.
This is an exploration of duality, which means that the good and bad has continually coexisted in my life, which means that success, that followers, that money did not buy my way out of discrimination, out of oppression, out of disability. And so the hardships have continued to exist alongside my successes. And so this isn't a story that will end wrapped up in a pretty bow that says everything's great now, because that's not life. And I don't want other people to read my story and feel like, oh, I can work my way out of disability. I can work my way out of hardship, because the hardship you face is not a you problem. It's a systemic societal issue, and that's not on you as an individual. And so I very purposefully did not want to write my story in a way that said, I overcame my hardship and now life's great, because that's what so many memoirs are, the rags to riches stories.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that does our community justice. So I do talk about hardship the whole way through, and that doesn't take away from the wonderful, beautiful moments that I share. But I think that if you want a moment where you end up feeling just simply inspired by the end, then this isn't going to be that read. And that's okay, because I think there's plenty of those books out there. But this book is for the people who need to see themselves in a story. And that's something that I grew up not feeling I had. And I know many other minorities don't feel that they've had. And I hope that this can be that for them.
Well, I'm so happy that you share that, because there's so many different layers that we can see in the book. And the one thing that you mentioned, I mean, there's no sugarcoating. Like, we have to really be honorable and be able to talk about what you have gone through, really giving transparency on what we had to go through to get to that point.
What you doing, bud? I'm just reading.
Yeah, this is the star of the show.
Yeah, he's like, I should be center, actually. Hi, buddy. I know the lights are hot, huh?
Oh. And I'm curious, based on the title, so unseen, one of the things I always think about is who is our supporter, especially from early age. And from first glance, the first supporter that, correct me if I'm wrong, is your parent. So my question for that one, and this goes to everyone who have similar experience, like, do you have recommendation for parents who have children who have some kind of disability? Because it's a new territory for them to go into, and I'm sure it's terrifying.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to see from your point of view, what can you tell the parent?
You know, many disabled people are born to non-disabled parents. And for a lot of those parents, their first experience with disability is their own child. And I can understand how overwhelming that must be. Because there's a lot of parenting books out there, but there's not a lot that tell you how to raise a disabled child. And there's certainly not a lot who tell you how to do it from the actual disability experience. We definitely see a lot of non-disabled parents getting on social media and telling you what it's like to be the parent of a disabled child. But we don't see a lot of disabled people saying, this is what worked with my parenting dynamic. This is what was helpful. This is what wasn't helpful. And that's actually one of the books that I want to work on next. My mom and I want to co-write a book for parents. That's something we really are passionate about, is co-writing it together to share both sides of the same story, from my perspective and her perspective, of what did work and what didn't work and why, and what we want other parents to know, because I have so much empathy for the fact that it must feel like an incredibly isolating experience when you're first thrust into it. And I understand that just as much as I had to grieve my vision loss, my parents had to grieve that vision loss. And they had to discover a whole new identity and community. And unfortunately, I believe that most people in society are ableist, and they're not doing it intentionally. It's just that's how society's always been. And for so many decades, disabled people were literally hidden away from the world. We had like ugly laws that forbid disabled people with physical differences from leaving their homes. We had people institutionalized and segregated for a very long time. And so the only access people did have to learn about disability was media. And when there's very little representation in media, and the main representation we are getting is written, directed, and played by non-disabled people, that's really problematic, because it's only perpetuating the misconceptions and the stereotypes, which furthers the discrimination and the ableism.
Yeah.
And then you turn on media, like news, and read magazines and newspapers, and it's a lot of inspiration porn and pity and praise narratives. And again, like continuing to further a lot of these ableist beliefs. And so when that's how you've grown up, and then you have a disabled child, and that's your first touch point with real life disability, all these narratives in your head are the ableist ones that we need to cure, we need to fix, we need to change, we need to heal this child. And you get thrust into the medical model and a lot of that kind of cycle. And that was my childhood. I was deeply entrenched in the medical model, and I don't blame my parents for that. That was what they were told they were supposed to do to be good parents. And they did not understand how harmful the medical model mindset was for me. And so I don't blame them. I blame an ableist society that told them the moment they have a disabled child, this is what you have to do now to be good parents to your disabled child.
Yeah.
So it's a really hard journey to navigate. And I have a lot of empathy for non-disabled parents entering the space. And I think the best thing you can do is learn from disabled adults, is consume content by disabled creators. So you can really learn not from other non-disabled parents of disabled children, who are often continuing to perpetuate a lot of harmful rhetoric and narratives around disability, but from disabled people themselves. Consume media, consume content from disabled people. That is who you need to be learning from.
Yeah, I think that is the wonderful information to share, and it's just really creating a space. And I mean, I'm just thinking about that comment right there because I think about from my upbringing, and I remember my parents keep listening to the doctor, and the doctor should keep telling them this is what you need to do to cure the deafness. So that is a very it's a lot to take. It's a lot to take in.
It's a lot. I think it's so important to understand, for non-disabled people to understand that from the moment you are born or diagnosed as a young child, when everything you're hearing is you need to be cured, what that translates to is you are not enough. You are not whole as you are. You are not good enough. You are broken. We need to fix you so you are one of us, because that's how you will live a successful, happy, healthy life. And how on earth are you ever supposed to feel confident and whole and secure and good enough when that's what you've been told by society your whole life? Of course I got depressed when I went blind and realized I wasn't going to be cured. Of course I became suicidal. All I'd been told forever is that's no way to live. And now it's my unchanging reality.
Yeah.
Of course I'm not going to feel optimistic and positive about it. And I'll never know how different life would have been if the messaging society had been giving me my whole life was one of empowerment and uplifting, and that you are good as you are. Nothing needs to change. This is who you were always intended to be. Look at this incredible community you're a part of. Look at how capable they are. How that would have changed my trajectory, we won't know. But I would love to see a world where other kids get to be raised like that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm always constantly looking at the perception from other people, but I'm realizing it's not us that's broken. It's the society that's broken to me.
Exactly. And I had to go on a long journey to unpack my own internalized ableism and to understand that I'm not the problem. And it was funny because the first time anybody ever said something like that to me in words, like very directly, was when I was 16. And it was my special education teacher who came from a disability studies background. And she said to me, you know, do you ever think about the fact that you don't need to be cured? And the very idea of it actually made me angry. Like, I was like, what are you talking? Of course I need to be cured. Life would be so much better. Like, obviously I want to be cured. Like, what do you mean? It was like so inconceivable to me that somebody would even suggest I could live a good life as a blind person. That's how deeply ingrained in me it had been. And I want to be so clear again, like, I do not blame my parents. My parents never once said in words to me, you need to be cured or your life would be better. They did everything that they could to empower me.
Yeah.
But being entrenched in medical model and being the literal poster child for a charity that raised money for vision research to cure me my whole childhood from 5 years old, that is ultimately the messaging everybody else around me was giving me, and just society in general, society as a whole. And so this very idea that I could live a good life and be blind was so foreign to me that it made me upset. And so I understand when people struggle when they're first confronted with something like social model of disability. I can understand that that is difficult to understand, that a disabled person can feel that they themselves do not need to be cured, because all we've ever been told is that we do. And so I understand that, because it took me years to go from like angry at the very idea of it to slowly starting to dip my toes in and like read about it and digest content about it and consume it and understand it, but still not feel it. I could cognitively understand it. I could not feel it emotionally myself. So I had to go through many years on that journey to get to the place where I truly do feel that I am not the problem. I, as the individual, am not the problem. Can I openly admit that my life is harder because I am blind? Yes, of course it is. But the parts that make my life harder are not my individual blindness. The parts that make my life harder are when people discriminate against me, or when I'm confronted with something that's inaccessible. Those things are not me issues. Those are societal issues. So I am not frustrated and upset that I, as an individual, am blind. I'm good enough as I am. I am frustrated that the society I live in hasn't cared to make a world for everybody that lives in it. And that instead has told us, you're the problem and you need to change. Thanks.
So we'd love to talk a little bit more about the book. And one of the things that I enjoy about reading it is all the different stories that you presented in the book, from when you were 5 to 14 to now. I was curious, because earlier in the conversation, they talked about some of the things that you're not ready to share yet. Was there any story that you mentioned in the book that you kind of struggle with about sharing, whether you want to share it or not?
Absolutely. I went into writing this book not really knowing what it would become. I am the type of creative that can't work off an outline. Mm-hmm. I can't be forced to write something or check a box. It's why I don't script my videos. It's why when you ask me, do you want to know what I'm going to ask you, or do you want to just go up and have a conversation? I said, don't tell me. I just want to go up and like be in the moment, because that's just who I am. I don't like structuring things. I like the ability to be just free flowing. And so I didn't write an outline for this book. I didn't have all the stories plugged in of what I wanted to talk about. It became what it is through many writing sessions of just locking myself in a room for 10 hours in complete and utter silence. I would literally turn my screen reader off, no music, nothing, and I would just type. And I would just let whatever needed to flow out of me come. And some days were easier than others, but the writing process itself, I would just get in this flow state. And it was like these stories that had been living inside of me untold for so long just came out, like they were at the surface, ready to break free and like finally be out of my body. And it was very cathartic, very healing for me to finally let those things out. And that doesn't mean it's not also very scary. When I was preparing to write a memoir, I read a lot of memoirs because I wanted to see, like, what do I enjoy in reading a memoir? And what do I not enjoy in reading a memoir? So I can take those and have them in the back of my mind when I'm writing. And the two memoirs that really struck me was Jeanette McCurdy, I'm Glad My Mom Died. It was a bestseller for months on end for a reason. And Julia Fox, Down the Drain. And what both of those memoirs do, and I want to be so clear, I did not walk into reading those memoirs as a fan of either of those women. Frankly, I didn't know who either of them were. I did not grow up watching Nickelodeon. I did not know who Jeanette McCurdy was. I'm not like super into pop culture. I did not know who Julia Fox was. So I did not have any idea what I was going into. They were just like buzzed about in the memoir space. So I was like, well, I should read them. And what both of those memoirs did that I really appreciated is they spoke about themselves so honestly, which means that they did not write a book with the intention of making themselves look good. They wrote a book and shared the authentic human experience, which means we don't always look good, because all of us as humans are flawed. And we have moments we're not proud of. And it's really easy when you write a book to pick and choose the moments that make you look like the best. And it's not easy to share the moments that we know are things we've been told our whole lives are things we should be ashamed of. Julia Fox talking very openly about her drug use. We've been told to demonize drug use, that this is a shameful, negative thing that you've done. You should be embarrassed. And she spoke about it so honestly, even if it meant she didn't always look good. And Jeanette McCurdy did the same in speaking so openly about her feelings of jealousy towards Ariana Grande. We've all been taught to be embarrassed of jealousy and act. I'm just happy for her. I know, so good. So she deserves it. Like, we've been all taught to pretend that we don't feel jealousy. We're holier than thou. We're just happy for everybody else. And that's not real. Sometimes we feel jealous. And that's a real human emotion. And that's okay. And so I left those books not judging those women for these negative things that they admitted. I left those memoirs feeling more connected to them as humans, more connected to their humanity than any of these fluffy memoirs I was reading, sharing the highlight reels. And I know that there will be people who left those books with judgment. I know, I saw the negative reviews. And I had to know in my heart that if I could read something like that and walk away seeing their humanity and connecting deeper with them, but some people could still walk away judging them, I had to make peace with the fact that that's what's going to happen with my book. That if I'm willing to be vulnerable and share parts of myself that I'm not proud of, with honesty, hoping that it does connect with people, that there will be people who walk away judging me for that, and I must be okay with that. And that's the hardest part of releasing this book into the world, is knowing that I'm completely honest with who I am as a person. And there might be people who leave not liking me very much. And I have to make peace with that. And know that what's more important is that there will equally be people who connect deeper with it. And that's who that's for. That's who the book's for.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I was just reading the book, and one of the things I really connected with is we had a similar upbringing, and we're talking about Mean Girl. I mean, I love Mean Girl. So, and it was really interesting how you found different comparison with pop culture and so forth. And I really appreciate that because it just made me kind of fall into that group and that memory that I had growing up. So it's not just a book about plots, like you say, the highlight reel, but it's really about the little thing that occurred during that time, what you were thinking about, and those moments. So I think those small little moments made the connection with the reader, because I can travel back in that time period too, and be able to connect to that.
There's definitely a lot of like millennial pop culture references. So the millennial girlies will have some moments that probably trigger like, when I was in grade 6, I read that book, and like little things like that for sure.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Yeah, I'm always the person who like to set time to make sure we are not going over. I love the talk. So I have one last question for you. So what's next?
Well, what's next is Elton John's book. So when I pitched my memoir 2.5 years ago, I also pitched a children's book. I pitched the 2 books at once. And that's actually why I went with the publisher I did, because they were the one publisher who wanted to buy both books. And so his book was written before mine was. I wrote his book 2.5 years ago. But the illustrations, it's a children's book, so the illustrations take a long time. I was very passionate about making sure that my illustrator was disabled. And so that obviously narrows the pool to pull from. I had 5 incredibly talented disabled illustrators to select from. And I selected a wonderful deaf woman who lives in Singapore, who is booked and busy. She's so talented. And so that kind of delayed our timeline for his release because we had to wait for an opening in her schedule. But she's worth the wait. She's very, very talented. So we've just been starting to get the artwork. We had the initial art in about 2 months ago. And now we're getting into like the finals where color is being added, which is very exciting. So yes, fall 2026 will be his children's book. And he walks kids through a day in the life of a guide dog and what guide dogs do and what it means to be a guide dog. And then there's a little page at the back of kind of what to do if you think you see a service dog, like the do's and don'ts of interacting with service dogs. And so it's a way for parents to A, educate themselves, and B, have a safe, easy way to educate their kids. Very excited for that.
That's amazing. I mean, yeah.
Thank you.
I'll be the first person in line because I want that book to read to my baby.
I'm so excited because we got to figure out like how to get, I'm trying to figure out, do I want to do like a snoot boop or a potograph? Like, but I'll have to get like a little stamper for him so he can stamp all the books. And I really want to do like, bring your dog book signings. So like the family, it's like a whole family affair, you know, the dogs can come, the kids can come, and it'll be a whole fun little, another book tour for Elton.
Oh, I love that. I'm really excited about that already. Well, this is a perfect opportunity for us to open up to Q&A, and we have a person who has the microphone to make an announcement.
Hi, Molly. My name is Jillian. I have my guide dog Song here with me. I wanted to ask you about, obviously, a lot of your channel, and I imagine a lot of the book is talking about, you know, difficult scenarios, discrimination, really hard and important stuff to highlight. But I wanted to know, because it's something that I've experienced myself personally as a blind woman or person, if there were any moments you wanted to share where being blind has made you feel like the world can be a really beautiful place and that people can be really good, because I know for as much hard stuff that we have to deal with, there's also a lot of moments of like just kind of genuine human kindness and beauty. So if you had anything like that, please share.
Yeah, disability joy is something that like doesn't get talked about enough. Not just disability pride, but like the joyful moments that come with being disabled. And it's important to talk about not just the hardships, but to also celebrate the beautiful things. So I think truly like when people make me feel seen without making it a hero moment for them, I think, and this is where sometimes with social media content of non-disabled parents to disabled children, it can feel like they make content of like heroism, like I'm a hero for being the parent of this disabled child. And it makes it about them instead of about genuinely like educating on the disability experience of parenthood. And I think whenever somebody has a moment where they're not trying to be seen for being inclusive, they're just genuinely being inclusive, that brings me so much joy and comfort. When I like go to a restaurant and they just bring out a Braille menu and put it down and they don't make a big to-do of it, and it's just like this moment where they saw what I might need and they provided it, no questions asked. Those little moments are so beautiful. Or when somebody just knows to be like, I have my elbow out for you if you need some sighted guide. Like when people just know what to do, I hate that it's surprising to me, but it is. Every time I'm like, oh my God, how do you know that? Or like, whoa, this is crazy. And I'm like, it's so interesting to me to think that most people go about life just being seen. Like most people go about life like not being shocked when something is accessible or inclusive. And I feel sad that my community has to be surprised every time. And I can't wait for the day when accessibility is the expectation and not the exception. Because I think we will get there.
Yeah.
All right, we'll take this next question in the front towards your right. Please introduce yourself and ask your question.
Hi, my name is Jeremy, and I'm 34, so kind of a bridge age, like you were talking about, between when I lost my sight at 6, and then now I'm here. So what would you say to the younger people in the audience who are looking to like the future and kind of things to prepare them for that might not be known, like stoplights and things like that?
Great question. I think my biggest advice for anybody who's new to the blind community, who's new to vision loss, or who is young in the blind community is truly to get involved with the community. It is so vital to be involved with the blind and low vision community, because I can't tell you, when I was in high school and once a month I would get to go to a retreat for one weekend with other blind and low vision teenagers. And when I would go, the only way I can describe it is it felt like a sigh. Like just like,
Yeah.
I can take off the mask. I can just like be so wholly myself. And I still have those moments. I was on a trip recently in Denver where everybody was disabled. And I said to my partner who was with me, I notice when I'm around a group of disabled people, all of a sudden, like I'm not forcing myself to try to make eye contact. I'm not forcing myself to do things to make other people comfortable about my blindness. I'm letting myself just be my whole self in a way that I wish I could feel safe doing in day-to-day life. But unfortunately, what society has taught me is those things aren't okay. And you only have friends and you're only successful because you fit in, and you must make yourself fit our box. And I hate that I still subconsciously find myself doing that. And that is still a way in which I am trying to untangle what society has been subliminally telling me my whole life. But it's so important to have your community where you can just go and take that mask off and be your whole self unapologetically and feel safe in that, and know that you can vent. And we would literally just get together and bitch about sighted people the whole weekend. Like literally, that's what we would do. We would just like complain about how irritating sighted people are and like how annoying the screen readers are, and like just like vent about things that nobody else would get. And if I had not had that for my own sanity, I don't know what I would have done. And that is still so important to me to this day. I would say the majority of my friends are disabled in some capacity. And that's very important to me, because those are the people that they just get it when the majority of the world's not. And in a world that makes you feel so isolated, you have a choice to choose to integrate yourself into safe spaces that make you feel less alone. And I can't encourage that enough.
Wonderful. Your next question comes on the left-hand side towards the middle.
Hi, my name is Cameron. I work with kids, so I'm excited about your children's book. But I wanted to know if you had thought about maybe gathering the perspectives of disabled parents and kind of exploring writing that parenting book. I have come across a few disabled parents in my work, and I feel like online, every time I come across this, it's like, wow, you're so amazing for like overcoming your disability and like raising this child, and parenting is hard for everyone. So I'm just really curious about your perspective on like, you know, disabled parents also in raising children and kind of this thing that they have to deal with in society where everyone's like, you are just amazing. And
yeah, or the opposite, right? Is you can't possibly be good parents, which is another thing that I see a lot in the space when disabled parents are raising children, is that it's unethical, Or, I mean, we've even seen cases many years ago in the early 2000s, there was a case where a baby was taken away in the hospital by Child Protective Services because both the parents were blind. And the social workers at the hospital and the medical staff didn't believe that two blind parents could raise a sighted child. I have, at least 5 friends who are parents who are both blind. So I definitely have, just in my own friend circle, a good group to pull from, at least for the blind lived experience. One of them, the partner is deafblind and she's blind, and they have 4 kids. So we know in this community it is very possible to be a disabled parent successfully. And that's a great point. We haven't even started on kind of writing our proposal for the book, but the hope is in the next few months to start the proposal process for that one. And that's a great idea to explore integrating that. And maybe we could talk to you.
Yeah, I was just thinking about it. We should collaborate.
Yes. I think Elton has to pee. So I think maybe my partner, if you wouldn't mind, coming and taking him to Piddle. Because he keeps getting up and he had a big bowl. This is my amazing boyfriend. Yeah, I can tell. He keeps like getting up, and he's been drinking a lot of water because it's so hot out, and he has a big winter coat on, the poor thing. And he had like 2 bowls of water before we got up, and the way he's usually like naps the whole time, and the way he keeps getting up, I'm like, I'm fairly certain he has to pee.
My name is Brett Adler. Huge fan of your Instagram and YouTube, so thank you for all that you post.
Thank you.
And I saw recently your post about Love is Blind, and I've also heard a lot of stories about your boyfriend. So I just wondered, have you ever thought about hosting a show like Love is Blind, but actually for blind, deaf, other...
Yeah, great question. So I had actually back in, I want to say 2020, 2021, been in the process of trying to pitch a show for blind dating as an executive producer, so I could be behind the scenes making sure that it's done in a way that's authentic, not tokenism, not inspiration porn. And unfortunately, when we went to pitch that proposed show, we were told it had already been pitched and it was already in production. Then a few years later, I think 2023, I was approached to be a part of that show, not as a participant, but as essentially like a consultant. An on-screen consultant, almost if you've seen Love on the Spectrum, how there is like the dating coach that helps them. That was essentially what they wanted me to do. So I filmed the pilot. I knew that this was the show that was in the works when I had pitched my idea. And I so wish it did not end up getting greenlit. So in getting a show to market, there's so many different hoops to jump through before it actually makes it onto a streaming platform. This had been commissioned by a streaming platform, so essentially it had gone pitched to everybody. One of the major streaming platforms did pick it up to do a pilot. If the pilot went well in focus groups, then it would move on to being produced. So I was on a holding contract where I filmed the pilot, and then it was like, we'll see if it makes it to production. And it did not make it to production, and I can absolutely tell you why. I wish they had come to me. This is why I had wanted to be an executive producer on the show I was pitching. Because when there's no blind people in the room creating a show about blindness, it's not going to be good. And when I got to truly, I'm it was unbelievable when I got to filming the pilot. I was so disappointed by the casting, because I could have told you the casting wouldn't have made an interesting show. No wonder it didn't get picked up. They didn't cast correctly, and that was very frustrating for me, because I think a show like this has great potential to bring awareness and to show authentic disability relationships and authentic representation in dating when done right. So I would be interested in exploring. I feel like my mic keeps cutting out. Does it? Or is that just in my head? Okay. I would be interested in exploring maybe now, like, could I repitch and see if platforms would pick it up again? But yeah, so the answer is like, we've tried it. Thank you. Should I turn my pack off just so we don't get feedback? Yeah, there we go. Okay. So I would be interested in maybe like opening that door again. But there's so much I've done that's like people don't know about. There's always projects in the works that don't get to, unfortunately, be where we want them to be. And that was one of them. But yeah, they basically cast somebody who was sighted. And I was like, I'm confused. Like, she still had 20/20 vision. She just might go blind. And I was like, that's not interesting at all. Like the interesting thing of seeing a blind person date is seeing like the dynamics of like, when do I disclose and how do I disclose? Do I put it on my dating profile or not? Showing up with a mobility aid, how does that make me feel going on a first date now that I'm a cane user perhaps? Or how does, like, that's what makes an interesting conversation. It does not make an interesting conversation when somebody is currently living as a sighted person who has no connection to the blind community, is not involved in the blind community, has just begun their journey of discovery of what vision loss might one day look like. That's not interesting. For all intents and purposes, she's dating as a sighted person. And that's not what is going to make for an interesting dialogue. It's not going to make for good representation. And it's going to make for boring show because what is it? Oh, it's two non-disabled people on a date. Okay, great. So yeah, that was why it tanked. And I could have told you that immediately in the casting room.
Awesome. Well, unfortunately, that is all the time we have questions for today. Let's give another round of applause for our presenters.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you all for coming. Thank you.